Hi, everybody. We'll be starting in approximately 1 minute. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on leveraging your existing SAP Commerce investment. My name is Stephanie King, and I'll be your moderator today. If you're attending this webinar, chances are that you've already invested in digital transformation. You likely have gone to market with a best-in-class platform, SAP Customer Experience Commerce Cloud, or what was known as Hybris, and your business is delivering personalized, relevant, and omni-channel commerce experiences. But digital transformation is ever evolving. What the market demanded from commerce experiences 5 years, 3 years, and even 1 year ago has changed. Today, we'll discuss how you can stay one step ahead of market innovation and needs. I'm pleased to introduce you to today's speakers. Greg Mason is the Director of SAP Customer Experience Expert Services, overseeing America West. He oversees a consulting group that provides services on the SAP C/4HANA portfolio of products. With over 10 years of experience in commerce and payment industries, he has worked with industry leaders such as Tommy Bahama and the McKesson Corporation to support the delivery of their digital strategy. Our other speaker today is Evan Klein, the CEO of Zaelab, a leading digital advisory and solutions company. Zaelab differentiates itself through its more agile and data-driven approach, powered by a continuous innovation delivery methodology. The company has over 100 employees across 5 countries that enables businesses to digitally transform through its advisory and delivery services. Digital transformation is more than just a buzzword. It encompasses both technology and an innovative mindset, which is fueling explosive growth for businesses. Every day, we're uncovering new ways of driving operational efficiencies and practices that will better engage customers. In essence, digital transformation is ongoing. It's important to iterate faster as a business because at this pace, we simply don't know what the future looks like. Today, we'll be taking you through the new C/4HANA portfolio that has reimagined the customer experience. We'll share what's new with Commerce Cloud, why you should upgrade, and show you how and why General Electric upgraded their commerce experience. We'll finish with other ways that you can leverage your commerce investment in a live Q&A session. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Greg and Evan to share more about how you can leverage your current commerce investment.
Thank you, Stephanie. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So let's start by talking a little bit about the new customer experience. So we've entered a time which Forrester calls the age of the customer, where everyone is a consumer, and it's having a profound impact on the competitive landscape. In the past, brands were competing for customers on product, price, and promotion, but these factors have diminished. More important now is the feeling customers get when they get involved with your brand, how they relate to your brand, and how they experience your brand with each and every touch point. When they engage with the brand, they expect that each interaction will be personalized in the context of the last one, and that you show you have listened and understand them. They expect meaningful experiences that resonate with them and that keeps them coming back for more. The only way to differentiate as a brand from your competition is through an experience that keeps your customers coming back for more. This is the new customer experience. So now that you understand a little bit about why customer experience is so important for a brand, let's talk about what good customer experience is actually about. It's all about relevance, driving relevant contextual engagements with every single interaction your customer has with your brand, whether that's in store, through social media, online, or otherwise. They want to feel like they're dealing with one single business. It's about meeting customer needs in the context of the moment, in the moment it is happening, and doing that consistently, regardless of where, when, or how your customers engage with you. And with those consistent, relevant experiences, a customer feels that you have listened and understood them, and that ultimately will create brand love, an emotional connection between your customer and the brand that keeps them engaged, keeps them coming back, and encourages them to advocate on your behalf and increase lifetime value. Customers are the ultimate judge of success or failure of a brand's consumer experience, and it needs to be about them. So what's driving the new customer experience? We see 4 global trends that drive that change today. These are the drivers that enable you to compete in the age of the customer. They create the necessary framework to reinvent business for the digital economy, connect with customers, and achieve long-term competitive success. The first is the single view of the customer, so you can put them at the heart of your business. Now, this is really how we begin to determine brand success today, whether or not you have a single view of the customer that allows you to drive personal services to help a customer achieve a goal. That's because time-constrained mobile consumers are changing how businesses compete on 3 levels. First, they have a higher demand for convenience. Then, they equate value for money with personal services. And they have an increased preference for known brands despite lower switching costs. The second is the move from selling products to selling services. Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, they started the trend, and many of you have probably heard the magic metric of 0. That is, they own 0 content, vehicles, or properties, respectively. Now, we recognize it's not always that simple, particularly for retailers. However, by eliminating that single transaction and turning it into an ongoing recurring relationship, that's how to win a customer for life, rather than limiting your interaction to just single touch points. The front and back office also must be connected. You can truly offer a holistic customer experience. Now, that's easy to say, but it's challenging to do. However, it's the foundation of single view of the customer. Systems need to be seamlessly integrated, talking to each other, and sharing and consolidating data using one consistent model. And finally, and perhaps the most important of all, the notion of customer trust. You need data for personalization and to deliver great experiences, but it should not, must not be abused. It needs to be trusted. As we've already established, customers want personal outcomes and experiences, but they want it provided in a secure way. If consumers feel their personal data is at risk, they'll quickly flee to brands with trusted practices and processes. Companies need to address these concerns when dealing with customer data on these 3 points. Number 1, consumer concern over loss of privacy and personal data. Number 2, proliferation of consumer data collection points and sources of risk. And number 3, compliance, risk governance, and the new data privacy and protection regulation. Brands that respect customer privacy and build a foundation of trust can not only develop more relationships with customers, they can also create more profitable relationships with them. So what is C4HANA? Well, for those of you who are in attendance or paying attention, this was a big announcement that came out of SAP Sapphire this year, and it was all about customer experience and the C4HANA suite. So in a nutshell, this was a complete rebranding of the SAP Hybris brand and portfolio, which now falls under the SAP Customer Experience, or CX, line of business, and C4HANA itself stands for 4th generation CRM. The C4HANA suite is a fully integrated solution that allows for support, sales, resellers, consumers, marketers, and product owners to optimize efficiently and provide a seamless experience throughout. We talked a little bit just now about that new customer experience, but what exactly are we talking about? Well, going back to what I've said, your customers are taking charge of the relationships they have with you. Your customers do not think in terms of B2B or B2C or B2B2C. They think about themselves as this is a me-to-B world. So in this me-to-B world, which we've also coined the age of the customer, they want 3 things. Number 1 is customer centricity. Customers want to feel as if they are the most important people to a business. They expect you to know their preferences and anticipate their needs accordingly. Yet, most companies struggle with this because they can't get a comprehensive view of their customers. They also don't want to cross that line, know too much, and come across as creepy. Number 2 is data protection. 80% of consumers globally leave brands because their data is used without their permission. And 2/3 of consumers simply don't trust brands to handle their personal information. How personal data is collected, stored, and shared is an important part of the relationship between a business and its customers. Once that trust is broken, it's next to impossible to regain. And number 3, they want one consistent experience. Given all those choices, customers want a consistent experience across all their touch points. It should all look the same, feel the same, and be seamless throughout. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to this: building stronger relationships with your customers. And that's what the C4HANA suite is going to allow you to do. So diving into the actual suite itself and the product line, it's a unified suite of cloud solutions that manage the customer experience based on one trusted customer data model. And it combines SAP's front office cloud solutions with SAP's S4HANA powered backend with artificial intelligence, really connecting the front and back office. The C4 portfolio of cloud solutions includes the 5 cloud solutions previously on the market under the SAP Hybris brand name, with some key updates and changes derived from some of the recent acquisitions that were made. The first is the SAP Commerce Cloud, which is the evolution of the flagship Hybris on-premise offering, as well as its recent launch on Microsoft Azure, which allows SAP to invest organically in a next generation cloud solution. It also includes the SAP Customer Data Cloud, which is the newest offering, and it includes the recently acquired Gigya solution and the legacy Consent profile and integration features. The SAP Marketing Cloud largely remains the same. However, it now integrates more tightly to the Commerce Cloud, and it's open to relevant partnerships as well. The SAP Sales Cloud is going to unite the former SAP Hybris Cloud for Customer offering with Revenue Cloud, the on-premise billing solution, and the acquired Calidus Cloud solution. And lastly, the SAP Services Cloud. And here it's going to focus on both field service and external generation multi-channel customer engagement and support, coupled with the recent Core Systems acquisition. These are all going to be seamlessly integrated across the portfolio using SAP Cloud Platform Integration, which can also leverage the power of IoT, microservices, and machine learning. And ultimately, it's going to allow you to drive customer engagement. That will enable you to transform faster and be able to embrace digital disruption. It's going to help you build that trust that your customers are looking for. You're going to be able to create those great experiences and give them a chance to have that magic moment with your brand. And it's going to allow you to keep pace with competitors and technology with a framework that's going to allow you to innovate and adapt quickly using state-of-the-art components. So before we actually get into talking about upgrading itself, let's talk a little bit first about what's new with the SAP Commerce Cloud. So the first thing I want to call out, as is probably already a little bit apparent from the last slide, SAP Hybris Commerce has now been rebranded as SAP Commerce Cloud. But what that means is it's still going to come in two flavors. The first is the legacy on-prem solution, which many of you are probably running today, and it will still, for the time being, be referred to as SAP Hybris Commerce. The second is the new public cloud hosted offering, which we're referring to as CCV2 or Commerce Cloud version 2. That's going to be built on Microsoft Azure and is available in a public cloud format. The other thing to note is the version naming convention has changed as well. So you can see on the slide there, the old convention used a major.feature.minor.patch format, and the last instance of that release was the 6.7.0.5 release. The new format is going to use a year, month.patch format, and that's to be consistent with SAP Cloud standards as well as the other products in the suite. So you can see the recent release, which came out in August of this year, is 1808, and it's already on the the first patch version of that. And that's the format we're going to continue to see going forward. Talk a little bit about the new themes in the latest version. And again, you're going to really see that put a focus on creating trusted experiences for your customers. The first is through context-driven services. You're going to be able to provide real-time customer experiences using personalization by capturing and analyzing contextual and behavioral data across customer journeys. It's going to help drive conversions, raise order values, and increase customer satisfaction. The second is Smart Edit for SAP Experience Management, which adds content versioning capabilities. It's going to give you more power to content managers to track changes made to the pages and roll back previous versions, as well as further enhancements around web content management, adaptive search, and the promotion engine. And then lastly, a lot of focus on integration APIs, and specifically to the SAP Cloud Platform integration, which is going to introduce a new and simplified way to integrate your back end. And it already comes with pre-built integration packages for both the SAP S/4HANA solution and the traditional SAP ERP. If we drill down another level, here are all the high-level features that came out as part of the recent 1808 release. I'm not going to go into these in a whole lot of detail because obviously that's not the intention of today. As well as a lot of this material is publicly available. So if you want to find out more, what I would recommend doing is going over to help.hybris.com, which is where all the release notes for the versions are contained. And there you can find much more information on each of these points, as well as any supporting videos that have also been created. But I did just want to give a little bit of a snapshot of the different pieces of areas of focus that we're seeing with the solution. So hopefully this paints the picture that customer experience is really a never-ending cycle, and things are evolving and changing very quickly. But we do have ways to help stay current and make it easier. The first is upgrading and keeping your version current, which is what we're going to get into next. Long term, you can start thinking about expanding into the greater C4 suite if you're only leveraging one of the solutions and taking advantage of the power that you can have by running them in parallel. And lastly, on-premise to cloud migrations, which we are going to touch on a little bit at the end as well. The other thing that I'll recommend as part of that, if you're curious about what's coming down the line with the product and you're not aware, the roadmap is publicly available and it's published on the wiki. So we always recommend our customers, stay in touch with that. It's typically updated quarterly, and then you can start to align long-term with your plan and strategy there. All right, so let's get into upgrading. So the first question that's always on a lot of people's minds is, why do we upgrade? Well, from an expert services perspective, the recommended practice is to always be on the latest version, and that's to take advantage of all the new features, bug fixes, and improvements. What we see time and time again is falling behind is going to lead to more complexity, because we do still need to treat these like small implementation projects. And obviously, the older the version you're on, the bigger the delta, the more complexity, the more time and effort that that's going to take. From there, there's really two main drivers that we see for why you should perform an upgrade. The first is supportability, and that's a big one. So if you weren't aware, product support for the C4 suite of products generally ends 2 years after a version's subsequent release. So tying that back to what we saw earlier, if you were running version 6.7, we've now released 18.08 as of August of this year. So that gives you until August 2020 until that version 6.7 hits end of life and is no longer supported. Thinking of that, if you're on a version older than 6.7, that window is actually smaller, and that end of life could be coming up a lot faster. The second major point is enabling new features. And this is all the new bells and whistles released that come with the new versions of the product. And we touched on some of those a minute ago with the new 18.08 release. The thing to keep in mind there is the current release cadence for the Commerce Cloud is once a quarter. So we're seeing 4 major releases come out a year, all with new functionality. So you can quickly see by holding off on upgrading, you can fall further and further behind. And within that 2-year cycle of supportability, you're already going to be potentially 8 versions behind the current, which again can add more complexity to the upgrading. The other thing I'd want to make you aware of as well is depreciation. So not necessarily in every major release that comes out, but typically 1 or 2 releases a year, parts of the product are deprecated. And this really happens for one of 2 reasons. It's either with older features that we don't see a lot of use or traction in the market anymore, or when features are moved over to newer technologies. So a recent example of that is the back-end administrative tools. Previously, they were all done on a legacy cockpit framework, and those have all started to move over on back office framework. So as part of that, if you've heavily invested in customizing those solutions, you're going to have to start porting those over or risk continuing to run on that older solution, which eventually will similarly hit an end of life for support. Now that deprecation cadence is similar for the code. It's going to be included, the code will be included for 2 years with those releases, but once that 2-year mark hits after the deprecation announcement, that code is no longer going to be included with the Hybris platform as shipped. So once you do see those announcements about deprecation, you really need to think about, 2 key things. One, how and when am I going to transition off that solution? Or if not, how am I going to keep my custom solution supported? And 2, if I'm continuing to develop and build, how do I work that into my transition plan? Because obviously I don't want to invest too heavily into a solution that I know I'm going to move away from. And then the last thing to think about when upgrading is Hybris' third-party compatibility list. So this is all the technologies that Hybris can run on, such as the web servers, operating systems, databases, etc. And this tends to vary slightly from version to version. As much as possible, the product team always tries to keep that consistent, but inevitably we do things start to shift and change as later versions roll out and the technology changes a little bit. So it's definitely a good idea to be aware of what third-party services are supported, and again, any impact that may have for you as you move forward. And then at the end of the day, you really need to start asking yourself, these 3 key questions. What are the identified business drivers that I may be looking at to cause an upgrade? How far is the distance to travel, and what does that mean from a time and cost perspective? And when do we start retiring that technical debt, as well as start to move away from custom code and ideally get back to a more out-of-the-box solution? From an expert services perspective, we drilled down into 5 key reasons we recommend for upgrading, and you can see them on the screen here. The first is functionality. We've already touched on that a little bit. You always want to stay current, take advantage of the new features, and continue to build on that. But that really drives us into innovation. And there we want to start actually utilizing these new features and building more innovative experiences for our customers. Simplification is another big key. So as I talked about, you want to start moving away from your custom code and ideally working that back into out-of-the-box functionality. And that's going to keep life simpler as we're moving forward and continue to upgrade. Integration is another piece. Newer versions come with newer integration points. And again, it can move away from that custom code and to a more streamlined out-of-the-box solution. And then last, of course, is support, keeping again in mind that 2-year window that you have before a version becomes end of life. When it comes to the actual upgrades themselves, we currently bucket them into 3 types. The first of which is the technical upgrade, or what we call a like-for-like upgrade. And this is really going to be about taking advantage of the security enhancements, the performance improvements, and then staying in line with supportability. It's the simplest form of all upgrades. And in this process, we take the SAP Commerce Cloud platform, we swap out the old binaries, the custom code is tweaked a little bit to run on new binaries, and then all the APIs are going to be available for future front office improvements. All the custom features that work in your older version will work in the new version. And then you're going to start enabling those features that are available out of the box or with minimal configuration. But you're not necessarily going to be able to leverage too much of the new functionality if it involves a little bit more investment. At the end of the day, you're going to end with parity of the solution that you currently had, but it's going to be running on the latest version of the platform. The second is the extend, or like for like with net new functionality. So this is again very similar to the technical upgrade, but here you're actually going to take advantage of the new features and turn those on as part of the upgrade process. So once you're finished there, you've got the new platform, you've got the parity with your old system, but rather than waiting and turning that on at a later point, you're turning on the net new functionality right away. The last and most complex is the functional migration. In this case, we're actually going to be starting fresh with a new version of the platform, and we're going to leverage the newest version of the accelerator as well. So we're taking advantage of all the new features and functionalities to replace custom-built code and retire our technical debt. And we're only going to bring over existing customizations that are absolutely necessary and provide real business value. Typically, we use this approach when the upgrade is driven by a desire to not only take advantage of one or more large features that have been made available, but also to begin with the latest accelerator templates as a starting point and write off as much of our technical debt as possible. So let's jump down a level and look a little bit more at the actual process of the upgrade, which is going to be broken down fairly consistently into 3 phases, the analyze, the execution, the outcome phase. So as part of it, really the way to think of it is when you customize Hybris properly, you're going to have 2 levels of your solution. The top level is all your custom extensions where your custom code lives, and the bottom level is the core Hybris platform. So when performing this upgrade, essentially what you're able to do is slide out the old version of the platform and slide in the new one and see how it's going to run. Now, very likely you are going to run into issues and parts of the code that doesn't work. So this is really what the technical upgrade process looks to address. So by performing an analysis, we start to see all the areas of custom code that are problematic and that are going to need fixing. We're going to test and document all these issues, and then we're going to be able to estimate the amount of work to correct them and get your system live. From that analysis phase, we move into execution, which is the actual coding and where we've been correcting all the custom code and ensuring it runs correctly on the new version. And as I said, the outcome there is you're going to have pretty much parity with your legacy solution, except it's going to be running on the new platform. And then you can make a decision whether or not you're going to start turning on new functionality, and you can do that through subsequent releases. For the extend upgrade, the process is obviously going to be very similar, except this time we need to start thinking about what new functionality we're going to turn on, and we need to take account for that during the analysis phase where we're going to estimate and work it into our project plan. So again, the execution is going to be the same. We're going to be upgrading the platform. We're going to be correcting all the core custom code. But again, this time we're turning on the functionality and we're building it out. So now we've got that very similar outcome. We've got the site upgraded, it's on the new platform, but here we've actually leveraged all the functionality that we wanted, and it's live and ready to go. In the final scenario, with the functional upgrade, this is where it's going to start to look a little different, and it's going to look a little bit more similar to a traditional implementation project. So here we have to start with a much more holistic analysis where we're determining what legacy code to port forward, because we really want to minimize that and only bring forward, like I said, what we absolutely need, because we're really trying to stay with the out-of-the-box solution. Here, we're going to move into more traditional build or engineering phase as part of the execution, and that's where all the new software is developed, the accelerator is built out, and the customizations are moved over. And at the end of the day, the outcome here is we're going to actually have more of a net new solution, which ideally has now minimized or completely eliminated all the technical debt we had with our legacy. So one of the things I get asked a lot is, okay, well, that functional migration or upgrade sounds like a lot of work. You know, how do I avoid that? And really the recommended practice there is through continuous upgrade. And that's what you see on the screen here. So really we're starting to work upgrades into our continuous improvement lifecycle and rolling them out, you know, fairly frequently. So the first one you're going to see on there is the patch release, which I talked about. So patch releases come out once a month, and they address any bugs or concerns that have been reported. So those are very straightforward and simple upgrades, and those are ones you're going to be, you know, trying to roll out every month or two to take advantage of that. And then the second is when we have a major platform release. So again, you know, that's a little bit more of an undertaking, but the more you do it, the simpler it's going to be. And really from an expert services recommended practice perspective, we recommend doing that at least once a year, but ideally twice if you can, because again, that's going to keep that process to a minimum and keep it simpler going forward. So the next question that I always get asked is then, of course, but aren't continuous upgrades expensive, you know, more time consuming and risky? And the short answer is 100% they are absolutely not. What we see time and time again is it's actually more expensive not to upgrade, particularly if you're already doing a continuous improvement type methodology. You're just increasing that delta, you're increasing that complexity, and that's going to just end up with more effort for your upgrade. So by doing it continuously, not only are you keeping that effort smaller, you're keeping it simpler, you're staying closer out of the box, but you're also able to take advantage of those new features and functionalities sooner, and you're getting the added ROI of that along the way. If upgrading is something that you're interested about, we actually do have expert services self-assessment tool where you can plug in a variety of factors around your current solution, such as version and integration points and customization complexity, and we can actually provide you with a high-level estimate around the cost and time it's going to take to upgrade, and we'll share links to that at the end of the presentation. The other thing that I want to make people aware of, if they're considering an upgrade and interesting, is the Expert Services Application Lifecycle Framework. That's our online wiki that has a variety of resources. Specifically for upgrading, we provide our Agile Delivery Framework and a series of recommended practices that you see on the screen here around quality management, architecture, application management, business requirements, etc. So you can really dig in there and start to get a better understanding of the whole process and the things to consider. So let me hand it over to Evan, and he's going to get into a case study example of an upgrade that was performed.
Great, thank you, Greg. Just see if I can take over the slide here. Great, so as Greg just shared with us, you know, the process for upgrading, there's a number of different decisions, but the benefits are pretty clear. Take advantage of the new capabilities that SAP Hybris continuously innovates upon. And what I wanted to talk about today was a case study. So one of our longtime clients, General Electric, whom I'm sure most of you know, has multiple business units across a variety of industries. And over the last couple of years, as Zaelab has continuously worked with them and several of their divisions on innovation around the Hybris Commerce platform, what they started to realize is that some of their key platforms had gotten out of support. And so, as I mentioned, General Electric's been a SAP customer and SAP Hybris customer for many years. Their landscapes include integration to SAP, ERP, Salesforce, Marketo, as well as SAP Hybris. So fairly complex landscapes. The specific case study we're referring to here is a division of theirs that was operating on the SAP Hybris version 5.4, and they needed to upgrade to the latest version. Not only was that a North American business unit, but this platform was actually globally deployed. So we worked with them for a number of different reasons. One of those reasons was the support had ended, but more importantly was that their business was looking to take advantage of several new capabilities that had been released from 5.4 to 6.7. So we worked with them to scope the project out. We scoped it out as an approximately 3-month, 90-day implementation from 5.4 to 6.7. And as I mentioned, one of the major drivers for them was the fact that their existing version was being eliminated. They had to upgrade as their support was expiring, but more importantly than that, the innovation that presented to them. So for GE, one of the major opportunities that they realized in upgrading to 6.7 was a substantial upgrade of the back office tooling to help further enable their business to do more with the Hybris platform. And there was a couple of different areas that were upgraded as a result of this project. One, the HMC, which is the control panel for Hybris across the board, has been substantially upgraded from 5.4 to 6.7. So this was a big win just in terms of making it easier for business users to manage configuration of the platform. Assisted service module was a big win for them. They wanted to enable their customer service and field sales reps to place orders and view order history on behalf of their customers. And by upgrading to 6.7, they were able to take advantage of this functionality. And as a result, they've shifted their customer service team members from utilizing legacy tools to being able to place orders on behalf of their clients from the assisted service module, which is part of the accelerator. And finally, the product content module, the PCM. This was a substantial upgrade for the General Electric team, and really they were able to roll this out across their different product teams and pass the power. What was historically an IT-centric task to manage products and so forth was actually shifted over to the product managers, and today they are using those to manage content and product content across a variety of different channels. So this was a substantial win for them, and the PCM has made substantial improvements. It's 5.4, so that's very exciting. From a performance enhancement standpoint, there were substantial upgrades from an updated code standpoint. There were substantial improvements to the front-end code, which gave us and them the ability to move a bit faster and more agilely from a front-end perspective, as well as new support and customer service capabilities that were provided to them. As well, security patch upgrades, upgraded security standards, and one of the major features that they were able to take advantage of is the GDPR capabilities that are now part of the Hybris 6.7 platform. So all of these were just some of the benefits that were realized as an outcome of that upgrade to Hybris 6.7. So how did we get there? And Greg, I think, did a great job earlier illustrating the general approach from an upgrade standpoint. But for us, what we did is essentially we started with a plan phase that really took a look at their existing code, did a soft upgrade of their platform to try to run their extensions on the new platform, and really started to make an analysis of exactly the work and level of effort that was required to shift from 5.4 to 6.7. Then what we did is a design phase. And this is where we started to look at some of the more complex pieces of functionality that were required to be upgraded. And, as an example, should we take this functionality that was built as custom functionality and redo it to leverage more native capabilities that are now out of the box with the Hybris 6.7 platform? So these are really where kind of your bigger decisions like ASM and PCM, you really start to kind of design that architecture and figure out what is going to be impacted and how should those kind of more sophisticated pieces of functionality be designed or architected, if that's required at all. One thing I would say here, and Greg hit on this point as well, the more frequently you upgrade, the less and less you have to do this, but certainly if you're going from 5.4 to 6. You tend to have more kind of bigger decisions to make. And so the frequency of upgrades tends to be something that just streamlines this entire process. And then finally, migration. So actually executing the upgrade, moving all of the old schema to the new schema, and being able to do this as we approach it in 2-week sprints so that we can show iterative progress. Stabilization, so once we've completed that upgrade, the one thing we have to do is ensure that we've completed regression testing, and that all of the existing integration capabilities, etc., that there's no surprises related to the new functionality. So finally, test and deploy. This is pretty key. Just making sure that the entire platform, once again, is fully regression test, and from there we'll do a deployment into production on the new version. So it's a 5-step approach, and as I mentioned for GE, it took us about 90 days. We were able to successfully do that, the 5.4 to 6.7 in 90 days. Once again, as you're jumping from a shorter version, or you're just doing a 0.1 or 0.2 releases, that timeline does shrink substantially. But the longer you wait, the more time and complexity and technical debt that is incurred. So.
Perfect, thank you. So we've been discussing ways that you can leverage your commerce investment, but there's a lot of benefits of ways of working with a digital advisory to digitally transform across other areas of the business too. So maybe, Evan, you could just quickly touch on what some of the benefits are of working with a digital advisory at all points of a digital transformation journey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steph. So as Steph mentioned, Zaelab is a digital advisory, and I think there's a numerous amounts of benefits. As companies look to endeavor upon these digital transformations, as a digital advisory, Zaelab is really meant to build partnerships with clients and really help understand the numerous and various options that exist and how to navigate certain technologies and situations. And so really our firm is built around providing strategic and actionable insights, and helping make better decisions that lead to the ability to continuously innovate and keep pace with the various market demands and market pressures that are out there.
Great. And Greg, just to throw it back to you, what are other ways to think about the digital transformation journey outside of the upgrading and the different methodologies we talked about today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing I alluded to off the top was an on-premise to cloud migration. And this is something to think about when planning an upgrade, because the two do go fairly hand-in-hand complementary. And it's something that's becoming more and more popular with our customers, particularly now that SAP is offering our second generation cloud solution, CCV2, that I talked about earlier. And really, it's taking the advantages of the cloud-based solution as opposed to a more bulky on-premise solution. Here you can save costs by outsourcing your infrastructure. It's got a high availability guarantee, which is right now at 99.95%. And it actually allows you to keep current more effectively, as with 2 of the 3 levels of the cloud offering. They do already include an annual upgrade as part of that. It also, we'll call it, the big difference there is the ability to innovate. It's not an as-is cloud solution, so you do still have the flexibility to customize and enhance your specific instance if you do want to gain that competitive advantage against your competitors. The one thing I will call out, though, when thinking of this is it does require you be on version 6.7, as that's the lowest version that will be supported in the cloud infrastructure. But if you're already planning to upgrade as part of that, like I said, you're probably already going to be moving to that version or later, and you should have no issues there with compatibility. A couple of the other key features that I would call out as well is it supports any business model, B2B, B2C, B2B2C. It is going to be managed and monitored 24/7, 365 by the cloud expert team. And it's all built on a flexible microservice-based architecture, which, like I said, allows for that innovation and the ability to extend the core platform to differentiate. It is all based on our accelerator framework. So for those of you familiar with that framework, it does come in a few different flavors and some industry specialization. It's going to include all the key commerce features such as product content management, experience management, personalization, order management. And it's really going to help you, continue to build out and enhance your omni-channel business, because it comes with some of the features that you would expect. and it's going to allow you some out-of-the-box integrations as well to some of the SAP suite, such as S4 HANA and ERP. The other thing to note when using the cloud migration is some of the self-service tools that are available. So it has automated quality, security, and compliance checks. It lets you create and manage environments, and that can come at multiple levels, either production, staging, or development. And you have a deployment portal where you can go in and continuously deliver and manage all this pipeline. The other key feature too that I'd call out is it does have auto scale functionality, which is a really important one that we see a lot of value in. So you're not necessarily having to run more infrastructure than you need, and you can scale up accordingly during peak times or peak periods without any hassle. So definitely, as I said, something to think about. If you are interested in doing an upgrade, it might be a good two-part thing or a large one-part thing to do as well. So that's all that we had for today. Let's open up the floor to the audience to see if there's any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, Greg, and thank you so much for your time and expertise today. So there was a couple of questions that came in from the audience, so we'll take the last few minutes just to address those now. I think this first question here, I'll direct it to Evan. So the attendee is wondering about resourcing. They're curious what type of resource allocation you'd recommend from the client side in both a minor or in a major upgrade.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, certainly there's a varying degree of differences from a minor and major standpoint. When you're looking at a major upgrade, there's more, as I mentioned, there tends to be some design and thought that's required around moving, capabilities that may have been built in a custom way to more of a native approach. And in that scenario, generally we need to have some functional or business folks available to really work and discuss some of those decisions and help, help support, how that migration is going to work from a functional standpoint. So that's functionally. That's obviously reduced. That tends to be reduced when we're looking at a minor upgrade. So that's, there's a disparity there. On the technical side, the technology side, on the minor side, it's once again, generally, there's not too much technology, resources needed. But on the major side, there could be some level of technology resources required, either to reevaluate some of the integration work that may have been done. And so that's needed. And then finally, QA. We always, depending on where the platform's at, we always would like to have the client have some QA representation just to validate that, when the platform's ready to be tested and deployed, that there's been a thorough testing from people who have substantial experience utilizing the platform. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you, Evan. Greg, just another question here. They're curious what the typical timeline is for an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that's going to vary a little bit depending on what type of upgrade we're talking about. So I can kind of just go through the different scenarios. The first and most simplest is if you're just doing a patch upgrade. And like I said, that's with that patch release that comes out every month. That really is only going to take a week or two at a time because you're simply swapping some of the code. And it can actually just be dropped into the running solution. So because there's no real major changes there, everything should work as is, and it's just going to correct any kind of technology issues or holes in the platform. From there, when we run into a technical upgrade, that's typically when we get into the 4 to 6 week range. It's going to depend a little bit on obviously an individual solution and how closely it was built around our recommended practices and extension model. But generally with a standard technical upgrade, we're getting into that 4 to 6 week window. From there, once we move into the functional upgrade, now we're getting upwards of 6 to 12 weeks. And that's again going to depend on two key things. One, as I just said, how in line with best practices the solution is, but then number two, how much new functionality we're turning on, and obviously how much time needs to be developed there. And then once we go beyond that, we're obviously moving into a more heavyweight sort of functional upgrade, and then we're getting into kind of the 3 to 6 month range because we're incurring a lot more effort to do a much more major rebuild.
Perfect. Okay, well, I think that takes us to the end of our time today. So I'd like to thank everybody here for participating in today's discussion, and just share that a recording of the webinar will be sent out later this week. And of course, we're always available if you have any other questions at any time. So feel free to reach out, and we'll be sure to share these helpful links as well. Thank you so much for your time today.